Welcome to Brewers Daily. I'm your host, Dave Gasper. Lots to get to on the show today because we actually have some activity. We actually have the Brewers making a signing, making a move to talk about here, so we are going to get into that. We actually don't have just one, but we got two of them that happened here in a pretty quick succession for the Milwaukee Brewers. So we got that to get to on the show here, plus some updates on some trade rumors as well regarding the Brewers. But first, we got to start with the big free agent signing. I say big, but we got to start with the free agent signing for the Milwaukee Brewers. Akil Baddoo, outfielder, has been the last couple of years with the Detroit Tigers. He joins Milwaukee on a 1-year deal. And this is something that, Baddoo, he was a Rule 5 pick in 2021 by the Tigers, and he had an incredibly hot start out of the gate. He was electric. Slowed down a little bit, but still had a year in 2021 where he was a 2-win player, 2.1 WAR on Baseball Reference, hit 259, 766 OPS, 112 OPS plus, good numbers, above average hitter. And then after that, he was bad, largely for the next couple of years. He struggled. He's been sent up and down. Spent the last couple of seasons mostly in the minor leagues, and he's put up some good numbers in AAA. But when he's been in the big leagues, he has been not very good, which is why he's been spending most of his time down there in AAA. But Akil Baddoo, an interesting signing for Milwaukee, a very Brewers type of signing. Maybe a change of scenery will help Baddoo again, because as a Rule 5 pick, he needed that change of scenery to get his career started even, which he did, and he's able to kind of parlay that into 4 seasons in the major leagues. Even the last 2 have been largely partial, but he ends up getting himself a gig in Milwaukee, and he joins an outfield that's it's got quite a few guys, but he adds some to that Brewers outfield. But Baddoo is a very kind of typical Brewers signing. He's under the radar. He's not going to make a ton of headlines, may make a ton of waves, but he's someone who can add a little bit, still has some skill in there. He's 27 years old, still got some left in the tank, and you're trying to see what you can find there as Akil Baddoo joins the Brewers organization, which, kind of just adds to this outfield depth. And I asked Pat Murphy at the winter meetings how comfortable he feels about his infield depth, and he's like, "Look, I'm never comfortable about depth, whether it's infield, outfield, catching, pitching, whatever. Never feels comfortable about depth because you're always one injury away from something like that going wrong. Your depth can go away in an instant. We've seen that." And especially, I think, a little bit in that Brewers outfield, because Garrett Mitchell, as much as I love Garrett Mitchell, and I think, Brewers love Garrett Mitchell, he has not been available a lot over the past couple of seasons. Missed, nearly all of this past year, re-injuring his shoulder. Started with he only had such a few at bats out of Garrett Mitchell last year. You have him coming back from his second shoulder surgery, and you think he's going to be, good to go again, but you're also one injury away from Garrett Mitchell not being there, and then your depth kind of isn't there. And I've talked about this before as outfield as a sneaky need for the Milwaukee Brewers. I've talked about this on previous shows here on Brewers Daily, how that may be a spot for them to have to look for a little bit of help. And Isaac Collins is a potential regression candidate. Garrett Mitchell, again, you don't really know how much you can expect from him out there. Christian Yelich, you're not expecting to play a ton of outfield. He's going to be largely your DH. And that leaves some question marks out there in the outfield. So I think, because that could leave Churio playing left field, Blake Perkins playing center. And as much as Pat Murphy and the Brewers love Blake Perkins, I think he's probably best set as your 4th outfielder rather than your 3rd outfielder as a regular in starting lineup. So getting a little bit of extra depth is not a bad thing. So now you've got Akil Baddoo in there. He does have a minor league option remaining, which is crucial. The Brewers do prioritize guys like that. So they do like that. And I would imagine that Akil Baddoo probably starts the season in the minor leagues, provided everyone's healthy. I imagine Akil Baddoo is down there. But looking at the outfield group that the Brewers have, it's a pretty strong position now, at least in terms of numbers that you've got. Because obviously at the top, You got Jackson Churio, and you got Sal Frelick. Okay, for the purposes of this depth, I'm going to exclude Christian Yelich because, again, he's largely going to be your DH. He's not going to be playing a ton of left field. So you've got Jackson Churio and Sal Frelick atop your outfield depth chart. Then for the outfield, you've got Blake Perkins, Isaac Collins, Garrett Mitchell as your next three options in no particular order. And then after that, now you've got Baddoo, and you've got Brandon Lockridge, who showed well in limited time last year, and you've got Stuart Baroa as well. So, and Burrow's probably at the bottom of this list now. And he's someone who maybe could get DFA'd by the time the offseason's over. But still, that's your group. I mean, you've really got let's see, Baroa, Baddoo, Lockridge, Mitchell. That's 4 right there, plus Perkins, Collins, Churio, and Frelick. That's 8. You got 8 outfielders on your regular kind of reliable depth options for the Brewers to go with. So I think that puts them in a really good spot. And again, Baddoo being optionable, I think, is very important. I think he's going to spend quite a bit of time down there, as is likely Brandon Lockridge and Stuart Baroa if he ends up making it there. And then you've got your 5 outfielders of Mitchell, Perkins, Collins, Churio, and Frelick that are going to likely be competing for the playing time at the big league level. We'll see if maybe they go with 4 outfielders and send someone down, but I think there's a very good chance that they go with 5 from that group. So I think it puts you in a much better spot, especially if Garrett Mitchell gets injured again. If you get regression from Isaac Collins, you got a potential backup there, another option with some big league experience in Akil Baddoo to help you out. So I think that makes a ton of sense for the Brewers to get him in. It kind of shores up that position without really blocking anyone, gives you a change of scenery for someone else. And maybe Baddoo isn't able to turn things around. Maybe he is, but you're also covered in case of injury or things like that with a guy who does have some ceiling. He does have some spark potential, some ability when it comes to that. So that's the first move that the Brewers made this offseason, adding to that outfield depth, which was great to see. And then they add a little bit more to that group as they end up making a minor league signing here, signing Greg Jones to a minor league deal. And Greg Jones, infielder, outfielder, utility type, he joins the Brewers. Now, he's someone who was a first-round pick of the Tampa Bay Rays back in 2019, selected just a few spots ahead of Ethan Small that year that the Brewers took. And Ethan Small hasn't really worked out much either. And neither really has Greg Jones. Since that time, being drafted out of UNC Wilmington in 2019, he has played in a whopping 9 games at the major league level. He was originally drafted by the Rays and then ends up getting traded to Colorado, makes it up in 2024 for 6 games, and he got 1 hit in 6 plate appearances, and ended up going, so 1 for 5 total. The 1 hit was a home run, so he's got that going for him. But then 1 walk and then 4 strikeouts. And then last year, and then he ends up going to the Chicago White Sox, who, I mean, another fantastic organization. And he plays in a whopping 3 games, gets 2 at-bats, and goes 0 for 2 with 2 strikeouts. So in total, his career 1 for 7 with 6 strikeouts. Not great MLB experience, but again, that 1 hit was a home run. So he's got that. You can't take that away from him. He has homered in the major leagues. So, but Greg Jones, 27 years old, he joins the Brewers as a minor league deal, minor league addition, with an invite to spring training. So, who knows? Maybe he can impress in spring camp. But as we just kind of outlaid with that outfield depth, he kind of has an uphill battle there with 8 guys on the 40-man roster who are more legitimate, more likely options to fill out that spot. But also Greg Jones can play some infield as well. His big league experience has come in right field largely, but for him, he's going to be willing to play wherever the Brewers need him to, so he can bounce around a little bit, as he's listed as both an infielder and an outfielder. So Jones comes in. Okay, cool. You got to get your non-roster invites brought on as well. You're going to have a bunch of those by the time spring training rolls around because look, I mean, a lot of times, I mean, there are some of those non-roster invites that end up just making it through and they make the opening day roster. We've seen it before. We've seen it with Jake Bowers. We've seen it with Jesus Aguilar. We've seen it with Ji-Man Choi. We've seen it with a bunch of guys in order to make the squad. I mean, they're able to do it as non-roster invites. So he gets himself an opportunity, gets himself into a big league camp. Maybe he impresses, maybe not. We'll see. But it costs him nothing, and it can help you stash that AAA depth a little bit because he has played, largely outfield here. The Brewers did just lose Garrett Spain in the Rule 5 draft. And Spain was likely going to be in AAA this next year. So it kind of helps backfill that spot a little bit. You get someone who's a first round pick. You get someone who has some big league experience to kind of help cover there in the outfield with the loss of Spain. So maybe a little bit of an upgrade there for AAA Nashville. But he ends up getting brought in to the Brewers organization. So those are the free agent signings. Those are the moves that the Brewers have made. Glad to see them on the board here in free agency with a major league deal with Akil Baddoo. You get a non-roster inviting Greg Jones as well. Cool, sweet, whatever. But Akil Baddoo, the big kind of depth signing there. Again, big is relative because this is not a Pete Alonso. This is not a Kyle Schwarber big move. It is Akil Baddoo. So very excited for that, and very excited for Flintstones night when we can have on the scoreboard Yabba Dabba Baddoo. I just hope that that's up there, and they can do something with that. But now that leads us to the trade market, because the trade market is where things seem to be most active in Major League Baseball. The GMs are all trying to kind of maneuver the trade market, and we're trying to see some stuff happen there. There are some free agent signings, trickling through here, but a lot of it's being held up because it's a relatively weak free agent class, and these GMs want to improve their roster via trades. So until that market starts to burst a little bit here, where it's all kind of a waiting game for a lot of the rest of these guys. So the trade market is continuing to percolate. There has been some movement. There's been some rumors happening here. We've seen Freddy Peralta get named with 6 teams that have interest in him. At least there's likely more that we don't know about, but you can probably look at just about any single team in Major League Baseball and assume that they're interested in trading for Freddy Peralta. I would imagine the other teams in the NL Central aren't going to get very far with their interest, but by and large, everyone in baseball is going to be interested in Freddy Peralta if he's available to be had, especially with his salary. But the price is high, as it should be, and there seems to be a kind of a growing sense that he could end up going. I saw John Morosi talking about how he thinks it's more likely that Freddy Peralta goes than Tarek Skubal goes in a trade. And I've seen some reports, unconfirmed, that Tarek Skubal, there has been a lot of legs, a lot of movement between him and the Dodgers, which I sure hope is not true. And that the ownership, Chris Ilitch, would not sign off on a trade like that, because that's ultimately what it would come down to: ownership's approval, which I think ownership might not over there, but still. Some are thinking in Milwaukee, they're kind of more used to it, and ownership might approve it a bit more easily, so it might be a bit more likely that Freddy Peralta ends up going. So we'll see. I've kind of thought all along that the Brewers are going to end up holding on to Freddie, but those winds may be shifting. We shall see. And if there's that much interest, someone may put up a good enough offer. All it takes is one team to put up a good enough offer in order to make it happen. So we will certainly have to keep our eyes peeled on that one. But Peralta is being talked about quite a bit. Robert Murray of Fansided, he put out there that basically all he heard regarding the Brewers was Freddy Peralta. He didn't hear as much on the Trevor McGills and the Nick Mears of the world, but that largely all of their discussions were around Freddy Peralta and how those conversations were going and progressing. So It certainly seems like the winds might be shifting a little bit, but we'll see ultimately if Matt Arnold does pull the trigger, if some team does give the Brewers what they want in order to make this offer. So it's certainly a risky spot for the Brewers to be in order to make that move. You have to wait and see what they would end up getting back. But with the bidding war like this, you could end up getting a pretty strong return. I'm not sure what exactly the big needs are that they would be trying to fill with Freddy Peralta, because I mean trading him for like a backup catcher and like utility infielder, which seem like their main needs, trading him for that just does not make a ton of sense. And they generally don't like trading current big league talent like a Freddy Peralta for double A prospects, single A prospects. They don't really like doing that because they want to compete now and win now. If they're going to move on from Freddy Peralta, they're going to want someone who can help them this year. They're going to want someone who can help them in 2026. That's what they did with Josh Hader. It's what they did with Corbin Burns. It's what they did with Devin Williams. All these previous trades that you point to and say, oh, well, because of this past history, the Brewers are likely to trade Freddy Peralta. Well, in all that past history, they have traded for guys who will help out the immediate big league roster. That has been the plan. That has been the goal. So you kind of wonder where the needs are that the Brewers are going to be looking for an upgrade, and with what they would be trying to get back. So we shall see what Freddie Peralta might bring and what it'll take to convince Matt Arnold, if ultimately he can be convinced to trade Freddie Peralta. But it certainly seems like the winds might be shifting just a little bit towards Freddie Peralta ending up being on the move here this offseason. So time will tell, and we will talk about it if it ever does happen, and we'll do it right here on Brewers Daily. So make sure not to miss anything. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure that you never miss an episode. And of course, stay tuned to my Twitter as well. Follow me there at dgasper24. All my Brewers content on there as well. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next time. Hopefully with Freddie Peralta still on the Brewers. We'll see you again next time for another episode of Brewers Daily.